"Arrow," said the bowman, "black arrow, I have saved you to the last. You have never failed me, and always I have recovered you. I had you from my father, and he from of old. If ever you came from the forges of the true king under the mountain, go now and speed well."
Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are talking about a hero who brought down the last known great dragon in the world of Middle-earth, Bard the Bowman. Related articles and videos will be in the description and cards for more information. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Bard, whose name may mean beard in Old Norse, or guardian or poet in Celtic, was born as the descendant of Girion, the last Lord of Dale that was killed in Smaug's attack on that land, and his taking of Erebor in 2770 of the Third Age. Now, Bard's introduction in the story of The Hobbit and the world of Middle-earth at large is rather interesting and fast, because it actually happens during the attack of Smaug upon Lake Town in 2941 during the adventure of Thorin's company, and not before that. But we do know that Bard was a grim man, dark of hair and tall, and he was a great archer, one who carried a special arrow, the black arrow from his ancestors. Despite being as important as he was in the story and in his own lineage, and even though he was a courageous and skillful captain among men, he was really only introduced right before the greatest deed of his life, the slaying of the dragon Smaug. Being the descendant of Girion, and perhaps being as learned as he was great as a warrior, he also knew the speech of thrushes. How Bard gained notoriety as a captain and earned his place, especially in whatever military that Lake Town had, I am unsure. And concerning his whereabouts when Thorin's company was staying within Lake Town, I'm also unsure of that. Again, Bard enters the story at a very interesting time, and even though he is a captain and the descendant of a great lord, there's not much that can be said about this character that we know of explicitly before his events in The Hobbit. We don't even know when he was born. While Smaug burned Lake Town, Bard continued to stand against him, loosing every arrow he had until only the black arrow, a special arrow which had never failed his aim before, was left. In that moment, a thrush that had known the weak point of Smaug, that had been discovered by Bilbo, came and told this to Bard, who used this knowledge to accomplish a great deed and slay the greatest known dragon in those later years of the world. Bard survived and came back among his people, after swimming from the wreck, and they made him king, something even Girion had not been. Yet still, Bard recognized the political power of the Master and would serve him until such a time that Dale and Lake Town, or Esgaroth, could be rebuilt, and to do this, they would need some riches from the lonely mountain Erebor to aid them in the rebuilding process. Not knowing if the dwarves of Thorin's company were alive or dead, Bard led his people to the north, who joined with the newly arrived elves of Mirkwood in going to the mountain and seeking gold. But of course, luckily, Thorin's company yet lived, but Thorin had grown fierce and greedy within a short time, and would not honor any of Bard's requests for bartering, not with the men of Lake Town armed at his door, and with the elves at Bard's side. Nothing, Bard said, could overcome Thorin's pride, and soon Bard and the others would be surrounded by a host of dwarves who were coming from the Iron Hills to aid Thorin in securing the mountain from elves and men, and any others who might threaten their wealth. But Bard had friends unlooked for, and Bilbo, the Hobbit, who had heard Bard's pleas and recognized the goodwill within them, took the stolen Arkenstone, that which Thorin prized above any other jewel, and he delivered it to Bard, taking it as his 1/14th share of the gold from the terms of his adventure, that Bard might use it to ransom enough gold to ensure the security of his people. Gandalf would also come to stand with Bard, and it becomes quite clear in the tale that he, the slayer and shooter of the dragon, Bard the Bowman, the man his people named king, had more right than any, perhaps, to at least a share of the dwarven hoard of Erebor, and would indeed do the most good with it. Bard attempted to use the Arkenstone for a ransom, and Thorin feigned an agreement to this bitterly, feeling betrayed by Bilbo and hoping that, with the arrival of Dáin and the other dwarves, he would still not have to honor the agreement and retake the Arkenstone anyway. Yet the situation changed entirely with the arrival of goblins, bats, and wargs, and Bard once more became a leader of his men in battle, fighting in the Battle of Five Armies. In the end, Bard would survive, but Thorin would succumb to wounds from the battle. Before he passed, however, Thorin saw the error of his ways, and his successor, King Dáin, would allot Bilbo's share to Bard and his men, still giving some treasure yet to Bilbo as well. And with this wealth, Bard and his people would go on to rebuild both Lake Town, further up the lake and away from the corpse of the dragon, and Dale of Old, where Bard would rule as its first king. And Bard set the Arkenstone upon Thorin's breast, that he might hold it for the rest of time. Bard also gave some wealth to the Master, who took it and fled into the wild where he perished, and he was replaced with a far better and fairer Master. And Bard also gave to Thranduil, the Elvenking, the Emeralds of Girion, a necklace that had belonged to Bard's ancestor, for the aid that Thranduil had given him and his folk in their time of need. 3 years after the death of the dragon in 2944, Bard took up his rule as the king, and he ruled until 2977 when he passed, and was succeeded by his son Bane. Bane would be a good king, as was his son Brand, who was a leader of the Free Peoples during the War of the Ring and fought back against the Easterlings, perishing next to his friend King Dáin in the Battle of Dale. But after the defeat of Sauron in the south and the subsequent defeat of the Easterlings, Brand's son Bard II, the great-grandson of Bard the Dragon Slayer, would rule after Brand on into the Fourth Age. But despite all of the battle and destruction that had come to the Dalelands and Lake Town during the late Third Age, Bard the Bowman was perhaps the greatest leader and archer warrior among men in that land, and it was his own strength of will, courage, and good heart that saw the northern kingdom of men restored and strong for many years to come, ruled in after times by his descendants in similar ways after Bard's passing. And so we come to the end of our tale on Bard the Bowman. From this tale we see that not only is it enough to have good will, nor is it enough to be strong and skillful, but we must labor to ensure all of these things work in a blended and tempered measure, as Bard did, to do the best we can for our people. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this small video covering the history of Bard the Bowman. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on Bard? Let me know in the comments below. I think the character of Bard makes for an interesting addition to the story of The Hobbit, and he is a great foil to characters like Thorin and the Master of Lake Town. I just wish we got to know him more before and after his great deeds in the story, as more lore about the character could have made his deeds even more impactful, perhaps. But I also like how humble this character is, in that he came forth in the story to do what needed to be done, and left the great tale when such deeds were done, doing all he could for his people. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles through the link in the description below, and please check out our merch and Patreon. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralik, Blair Scott and Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sabatch, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Adam Petrolik, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, Dale Davis, Kingswald Project, and Robert Bogue. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next Sunday with a video on how the films changed Aragorn, but, in my mind, still did the character justice. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.